guys, welcome to Endurance Room. Today we're going to be finishing up the Wickiup build. I've got it about 2/3 of the way covered. Right now there is 5 hours into the build, including a basic primary frame, some cross hatching with smaller branches, and then using deadfall from around the forest floor to fill in the gaps. After that was completed, I added debris right off the ground with dirt and live vegetation, and I've got it about 2/3 of the way covered. I've got about 1/3 of the walls left to finish up, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So after the primary structure was built and those gaps were filled in, it did not take very long at all to add in the debris. It was a really simple, efficient process. It's literally just reaching down into the dirt and squeezing off the top layer. It's really soft, and there's very little root structure at the top soil. It's mostly pine needles and mud with a lot of weeds and moss mixed in. That's what's on there. But if you get enough dirt down, like some of that vegetation is going to grow and you'll have a living structure, which is pretty cool. So here we are with the tarp off. This is what we got left to fill in. It's not too much. It's about 8 feet from that corner. That's 6 feet, about 9 feet from the debris to the debris wall. So we're gonna fill this in with some more saplings, do a little crosshatch work, add some debris, some deadfall, and then we'll fill it in with some mud and vegetation. So inside we've got the Plosh Palaka raised bed. I'm going to pull that out before we get started. It worked quite well. And then inside you can see like how well that it fills in. Not a lot of light. And that's just a basic layer that I've got on there. So on this wall, I added basically like a heat reflector style wall of deadfall. Just laid them in laterally and filled in the gaps and built that up. And then at the top, I laid some bark from a dead pine tree to help give it a little bit more water protection before I laid, the mud and vegetation on. It's a Dakota fire pit. That's drying out. I'm going to line it with clay, and hopefully the clay will bake and give me protection from that flooding. So the first step is going to be to process some saplings for the back wall to fill it in. I collected these on my way in here. My first time processing these, I sheared off all the branches and just took it down to, the wood. But you can leave a lot of the branches alone and then just cram them into place. You can be pretty random with it after you get the primary structure established. This is all lashed together. This is solid. I'm taking my new stuff, driving into the perimeter. I could lash right there at one point. I left the branches on it. It's sticking up, protruding out. The initial frame was a really smooth dome, but now I'm just leaving the overhang, and that's going to help secure the materials that get added to the top layers. So this piece is just levered underneath one of the primary cross pieces and wedged in there, and now it's being held by pressure. I'm going to add a few more layers to that, and then we'll grab some deadfall from around the forest to fill it in. But this is the hard part. I'm going to show you how it's done. All right, so I've gone along and filled in with deadfall and some cuttings from the saplings. It's pretty thoroughly covered, but when you come inside, that's what we're gonna have to fill in. As you look around behind me, the forest floor is gonna comprise our next layer. We want to get sticks and leaves and debris filling in all of those empty spaces. And then we're going to add in some soil and vegetation. And anywhere there's like moisture, it's going to come off really, really easily. And you know, as long as your shelter is getting some moisture, that should, you know, keep it going, and you have a living structure, which is really, really cool. All right, so I've gone about an hour and a half, filled in the frame with debris from the forest floor. I've laid a little bit more downfall, just some sticks and stuff from the area to hold the pine needles and debris down. And now the fun part, we get to green it up. So I want to take a walk around and find some moss and loose vegetation from the forest floor, and we'll start filling it in. So all through here is going to be the good stuff, and I want to get a good mix of soil along with the vegetation so it has something to take a hold of. All right, guys, it's been about 3 hours since I've got out here. I got out of here around 9. It's 12 after 12, and this is what we've got done. It is solid. Like, there's about 8 inches to a foot of like pine needles, debris, and moss like piled up around the exterior of the frame. Then I went around and collected a few more deadfall branches and just kind of laid them over the top. But yeah, I'm pumped. So with 3 additional hours, this is an 8-hour build. So one good full work day for an awesome shelter. When I first came out here, I wasn't sure what I was going to be able to pull off. I knew I wanted to build the frame and the structure, but I wasn't sure how I was going to cover it until I just started looking around at the resources in the environment and realized how efficient it was actually going to be. The most challenging part after getting the initial structure made was just collecting the debris, the deadfall in particularly, like the pine needles, the dirt, all the moss. That's relatively easy to collect. And by that point, you're on the home stretch, so it's not too bad. Yeah, let's take a look. So this would be something that you'd be able to add to as you see fit. Like if you noticed any leaks or any air coming through, it's pretty easy to. It'd be pretty easy to maintain. Just as long as your initial framework is solid, it should be good to go. I'm pumped. Let's take a look at it from afar. So we're about 60 meters out right now. It's pretty low profile. I dig it. Let's take a look at the inside and see how that's filled in. So a couple little spots on the side wall, pretty low. But this is all pretty solid. Right on, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed. This was just a quick look at building a Wickiup. We built the last third of it today, finishing out the wall and the framework before adding debris and a layer of moss and vegetation. On top of the vegetation, we just laid a little bit more deadfall to help compress it and keep it in place. But it's a solid structure. The walls are nice and thick. If there's any room that needed repaired or filled in, it's very easy to do, and it'd be something that you could add to over time. The initial framework took about 3 hours, but it was the first time I did it, and after seeing the process and what was involved, I think I could do that base framework if the resources were available in about an hour. I said an hour and a half the other day, but I've got a little more experience. It's been a whole other day. Yeah, I think I could knock out the frame in an hour, and the longest portion of the build was literally just walking around collecting the deadfall to fill in all the spaces before adding the debris. The debris wasn't too bad, especially the moss, the final layer of vegetation. That was quite easy to collect and lay down. Although I used a dome for this structure, it doesn't have to be. You could do an A-frame, you could do a lean-to, you could do a pyramid, teepee structure. It's whatever you want to do. You could do a dugout built into the hill, which would be awesome. The most important part is just getting your initial frame nice and solid, so you don't got to worry about anything coming down on you. Thanks a lot for hanging out, guys. Really appreciate it. Please hit the like and subscribe button to help me grow the channel. You guys take care. Cheers.